It's the ideal opportunity for a grandiose commemoration. NASA's Spirit Rover landed on the dusty surface of Mars precisely 21 years ago, reforming our insight into the red planet. In fact, the golf cart-sized rover was initially entrusted with looking for hints of water on Mars, and it eventually fulfilled its mission with no trouble at all. Since then, we have discovered that the rosy, gleaming celestial body was in no way, shape, or form generally as extremely dry as had been expected. But the Spirit mission also had a series of rather undesirable incidents in store. Tragically, contact with the rover was suddenly lost in March 2010. Since NASA specialists couldn't restore the connection in the period that followed, the mission had to end the next year. Luckily, Spirit was not alone in exploring alien worlds. Its sister rover, Opportunity, was built in the same way and would continue to analyze Mars under the microscope until June 2018. All good things come in threes. When NASA's Spirit and Opportunity rovers landed on Mars on January 4th and 25th, 2004, they did not land in the traditional sense. Instead, they bounced across the planet's surface multiple times in a heap of airbags before finally coming to rest. And while the rovers had left Earth on June 10th and July 7th, 2003, NASA specialists had given them a very exciting assignment. Could it be that Mars, which today is a great representation of a supposedly dead and cold planet, once had water? The Mars Global Surveyor and 2001 Mars Odyssey space probes had already uncovered the obvious hints of a previous lake, and the specialists decided to select the corresponding region in the Gusev crater as the landing site for Spirit. Opportunity, in turn, got very close to the Meridiani Planum region on the opposite side of the planet. If everything had worked out as expected, the mission would have been over after around 90 days. Luckily, anyway, not all things go as expected. Eventually, while the initially anticipated mission span was only 90 sols, a sol is equivalent to 24 hours, 39 minutes, and 35 seconds, both rovers were to surpass this target range by a long shot. Spirit ended up covering more than 2,200 sols rather than the designated 90 sols, meaning it was able to travel much more distance and take surprisingly more pictures. In total, the rover moved a sum of 7,730 meters across the Martian surface, sending more than 156,000 pictures back to Earth. But Spirit's scientific work was not dismissed either. Spirit took nearly 370 measurements with the Morse-Bauer spectrometer and 933 measurements with the alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, which were able to analyze Martian material without destroying it. And as already mentioned, Spirit was not tied to a fixed area. Instead, with its 6 independently driven wheels, it was capable of exploring the Martian surface in a highly mobile way. In addition to the different cameras and spectrometers, the rover was also equipped with a swiveling arm and a rock drill, as well as an instrument that allowed it to brush and drill a few millimeters into rock surfaces in search of Martian water. While most of us would probably need a short break after a journey through space lasting several months, Spirit began sending the first high-resolution color pictures from Mars to Earth shortly after its airbag-supported soft landing. What we saw was another Martian no-man's land, sprinkled with reddish-brown sand and countless stones, which at first could easily be confused with a natural desert. No less impressive, however, was the true color picture of the central portion of the Columbia Hills, captured from a distance of about 300 meters with Spirit's panoramic camera. But after the first pictures were taken and the first chemical and mineralogical tests had been done, an incident occurred that generally seemed like an ominous sign. On January 21, 2004, NASA's ground team suddenly lost contact with Spirit. It soon became clear that Spirit's computer had failed and was continuously rebooting due to a memory error. Fortunately, the specialists were able to fix the issue quickly and continue normal operations. On February 6, the scientific focus of the mission, the search for past water, was too initially poorly defined. The examination of the first rock samples showed that they were basaltic in nature and showed no impact from a wet, cool environment. Later, NASA decided to send the rover to the Columbia Hills, more than 2 kilometers away, where the corresponding panoramic photograph was taken on Sol 158. Spirit eventually reached the 5-kilometer-long, 3-kilometer-wide mountain range and made an exciting first discovery. Spectroscopic assessments of a rock showed that it contained hematite, a mineral that can form in the presence of water, among other things. However, the definitive water hit came on Sol 205, when Spirit examined a strange rock named Cooley's. This rock contained a clear signature of the iron-rich mineral goethite, which contains water as hydroxide as part of its structure. And while this unprecedented discovery was one of the strongest signs of water once existing on Mars, Opportunity recorded a similarly remarkable find on the opposite side of the planet. Specifically, Spirit's sister rover was faced with endless blueberries at its landing site. And in this context, it was clear that these were not tasty Martian blueberries, but rather small rock spheres made of hematite. They were partially embedded in layered rock at the crater's edge, or dispersed before it, and from this, the analysts concluded that they had been formed within the rock. This is important because further investigation revealed that it contains jarosite, a potassium iron sulfate hydroxide that naturally forms in a watery environment. What Spirit learned about life on Mars is astounding. Spirit then committed itself to the task of climbing Husband Hill and took another series of interesting panoramic pictures on a ridge beneath the summit. Further excursions to Molten Hill, Low Ridge Sanctuary, and Silica Valley followed, where Spirit captured a dust devil, an exceptional air vortex around 34 meters in size. But the rover also had further success in its continuing search for water traces. While Spirit had already identified a sulfurous material at Husband Hill in which water molecules were likely bound, the rover encountered a rock with a high magnesium iron carbonate content. This was important because this mineral forms in wet and pH-neutral conditions and dissolves in acidic fluids. Spirit had uncovered a definitive sign that non-acidic water must have once flowed on the red planet. In Silicon Valley, on the other hand, a sandy, beaten-up region became the focal point of scientific interest. The interesting thing here was that the sand in question was composed of 90% silicates, and generally, such a concentrated silicate accumulation can only be formed under the influence of water. It's even possible that the water came from an underground aquifer, and this suggests that this region could once have offered favorable conditions for the development of life. But modern Martian weather is somewhat more windy, as was demonstrated by the severe planet-crossing dust storm of 2007, which seriously hampered the further mission of the two rovers. As a result, less than 9% of sunlight reached the surface, and it took a while before Spirit and Opportunity were able to resume minor operations. After Spirit accidentally broke a rock with one of its wheels, analysis of the rock's interior revealed that it could also have come from a hot spring. A rover in a trap. Toward the end of the Spirit mission, during a hibernation period to conserve energy, another local dust storm struck. However, the worst-case scenario happened on May 1, 2009. Spirit got stuck in the extremely soft, loose material of the West Valley and was now trapped in the sand. To move the rover out of its predicament, the specialists recreated its stuck situation even on Earth, but unfortunately, Spirit could not free itself, inch by inch. Luckily, in the same breath, it was still able to produce enough power to complete further examinations, which allowed the sandy trap to be identified as a combination of basaltic and silicate-rich materials. Consistent with the adage, a surprisingly positive turn of events, Spirit's entrapment turned out to be an interesting opportunity. The surrounding surface layers showed that liquid water must have been present here recently. This was the only way to explain why soluble compounds such as ferrous sulfate had been washed down so far, while insoluble minerals like hematite and silicates remained on the surface. Despite this, there was still the problem that the rover was stuck, unable to move forward or backward. NASA responded by launching a high-profile campaign called Free Spirit, which allowed the public to participate in the rescue efforts. Through the assessments, the specialists concluded that Spirit had broken into a depression filled with material that could hold the clues to Mars' past. With sand and covered by a firmer outer layer. Furthermore, 6 months later, things finally got serious. Tragically, the ensuing recovery operation was not crowned with success. Only millimeters could be gained by the few driving commands, and during one of the salvage attempts, the right front wheel of the rover failed. The continually declining energy supply and the approaching Martian winter did little to ease the situation either. On January 26, 2010, NASA had no choice but to declare the end of the futile rescue efforts. From that point on, the rover was to serve as a fixed exploration platform. It would probably have done so if radio contact with it had not been lost on March 22, 2010. Despite NASA trying different tricks to re-establish the connection until May 25 of the following year, Spirit never responded again. This amounted to nothing less than the mandatory end of the mission. The last picture that Spirit sent to Earth in February 2010 shows us once again a panoramic view of part of the 166 kilometers wide Gusev crater. As already mentioned, its sister rover, Opportunity, had a much more successful run. Its mission only ended after 14 years and 219 days on Mars when it couldn't be awakened from hibernation after a dust storm. The last Opportunity pictures were taken on June 10, 2018, showing the faintly shining sun in the Martian sky, which was being obscured by the oncoming dust storm. And now, we'll show you how you can obscure the faintly shining subscribe button with your click. Press approve and subscribe with joy, so you won't ever miss another video from us again. We'll see you soon.